great to hear him because he has got a lot of the experience. So before I hand it over to Anshuman, a quick intro about himself. Of course, Anshuman will talk about it. So Anshuman is, guys, he is the global head of delivery excellence into the DXC, where he's leading the delivery excellence team to assure the world-class delivery to clients globally. And of course, he's working to improve and simplify the DXC delivery to client. So before this, Anshuman was also leading a team of transformation specialists at Global Delivery Services of ENY. So great to hear, Anshuman, and over to you. Over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Madan. Quick check. Everybody can still hear me, and I can see that you can see me, but I can't improve the view now at this age. So you have to suffer this view for a long time now. Let me know, as Madan said, if there are questions, you put in the chat box. Madan, I'll expect somebody, either you or somebody, to manage the question part, because I can't really see the questions coming in, right? So we'll request you to do that. With that, thank you very much to the whole team, EmergenTeck, and Madan and team. My namesake Anshuman as well in your team. So it's always a pleasure to talk to fellow community members. More so because if there was ever a time that we needed our community, it is today, right? Because there is, not just because of the pandemic. I'm not here to speak or refer to the pandemic at all. Enough and more people do that, and we are fed up of more and more information, and mostly useless or unrequired information. But so I'm not here to refer to that at all. I'm here more to refer because these times have forced upon us some kind of a rethink on what we do with our operations, and amongst the large facets of or multifaceted organizations that there are various departments. I mainly focus primarily on operations, though I've held stints in sales and related and marketing. I was for some time quality manager for marketing function, which was one of my most interesting experiences. But I focus on operations, and within operations, these are interesting times because the demand on operations is increasingly high, but the resources and the facilities available are increasingly less, right? More so than ever in recorded history. Everybody expects everything else to work, right? Most people are working from home, but they expect everything else to work like it was working 6 months ago. Your expectations of other companies have not gone down, except your expectation of your own company, right? When I say you, I'm not accusing you of anything, all of us included, right? I have had friends, including family as well, and occasionally myself. We have a lot of things to say about, food delivery is not happening, this is getting delayed, that is getting delayed, this didn't happen. All that is an accusation on operations, forgetting that we are operations for somebody else, and we are unable to perform the same way, right? So in that backdrop, when this topic came along, I thought, let me give it a shot. Obviously, RPA is one of the toolkits, and I'll speak more about it. It's not the only toolkit available. There are multiple tool sets available and for improvement of operations, but it is one of the more popular ones today, right? But so Madan gave a quick introduction. As he said, I manage delivery excellence for DXC Technology. DXC, as many of you would know, is the merged entity of 2-3 companies about 3 years ago, more than that, about 3.5-4 years ago, and is currently the world's third largest IT services provider with about $20 billion of revenue. I had the global function sitting out of Bangalore for delivery excellence. Of course, company has clients and employees all over the world. Before this, I've had stints with EY, HSBC, ANZ Bank, and Infosys as well. And one of my most favorite roles was with Kimpro Consultants, which is back in Mumbai. So that's a quick background. Mahesh, can I request you to be on mute?
Mahesh, can you please go on mute if you can hear us?
Mahesh
Mahesh,
is sure. Mahesh is surely not at his computer. But anyway, we will check along then, or if there is a view. Okay, yeah, thanks, Mahesh. But I'm sure all this experience that I cited and Madan kindly shared is not the reason why I should be speaking here today, right? None of what I said included RPA. So you may be wondering, why should I listen to a guy who has zero RPA experience or ability? I admit many of you might be far better experts at RPA or deployment and programs than I am. But let me give you some input so that you are a little more comfortable to listen to me for the next half an hour. So at HSBC, I led the RPA program for some time, not for a long time, but which was at that time the world's largest RPA deployment in any company, any industry, anywhere in the world, right? So that gave me a ringside view, hot seat view of everything that was happening. Subsequently, at EY also, I was for about more than a year in charge of the global delivery model, which included RPA deployment. Okay, so yeah, so that probably gives you some comfort that you can actually listen to me. So with that, let's hit the topic. And Madan, I see some graphics on my. I don't know. I didn't create it, but
yeah, somebody is scribbling on the screen, guys. At least I know Anshuman can't help to erase this, but would prefer if the gentleman who done this, if you can erase this one. I also can't do that because I'm not the admin at this moment. Uh,
okay, no problem. We'll
yeah, we'll carry on. We'll carry
yeah,
on.
somebody. Um, so yeah, so let's before we get into this, a little few bit more disclaimers as well. I'm not here to support or endorse any vendor or any RPA vendor or any RPA method or something. That's not my job. Not interested at all. All of them are good. All of them are equally bad or incapable or capable, and all mixed together, right? This is not a session to compare or endorse or support or go against any of the vendors, right? So don't expect that. And I may be actually quite not qualified to speak about all of them. Some of them I have good experience, so I can bring those experiences in. The other is that DXC itself offers several IT services, including for some clients and for its own internal consumption, RPA services. So my views are personal and have no reference to what DXC does or offers as a service, right? So that's an important one because, as you know, large companies offer multiple suite of services and they include some of these services as well. So what is RPA, right? I know that, we have this chat functionality here, we can ask, but just to avoid some, as Madan pointed out, hygiene issues, RPA evokes multiple responses. When I ask this question in other sessions, which are a little bit smaller sessions where there is an opportunity for people to contribute live and so on. Some people are, of course, experts and they have created bots and they are able to run bots. Most people are, I still find that, they have heard the name, they understand that it is useful, but they haven't used it. And of course, there is a group of people who are somewhere in the middle, right? And safe to assume that most of you would be more on the user side and have or have built something, or at least have dabbled in it. And hardly anybody here who has zero or no experience or understanding of RPA. If that's the case, you can always check it online. There is enough and more. And I know that Madan and his team have conducted several sessions earlier, some of which are very informative. I have checked, so that could give you more information. But essentially, I have often defined RPA as an advanced macro solution, right? Macros were tools that were many years ago available as part of the Excel, Microsoft Excel, and it was possible to record your steps and repeat those steps. Now, interestingly, most macros were either doing everything at the same speed or sometimes even slower than the human being, because human beings become proficient with time, or with a process, but macros don't become any more proficient than when they were recorded. Right? So whatever was the recorded speed is usually the subsequent speed as well. And of course, I keep saying that, and in those days, macros were told or presented as they are zero error solutions. They are not really zero error solutions. For that matter, even RPA is not a zero error solution. It's zero manual error solution, right? So any error that a human being could have injected into the process, it is possible to avoid that error, right? But if the process itself is error prone, if the process itself has many facets which could lead to errors, or there could be other technical errors in implementation of a macro and now RPA, those errors can still come in, right? Perfectly possible, but obviously no manual error, right? It will perform as recorded or it will stop. Now, so where I was at, you can see RPA as a advancement of the macros that were available in Excel. And of course, technologies are complex. Many purists or people who have a career in RPA will probably disagree with me. I'm fine with that, but essentially, from a concept point of view, macros evolved um, into what is known today as RPA or robotics. So that is important to understand that there is zero manual error, or possibly zero manual error, and in most cases the process is no longer not any more faster than the human being who was doing it. But the advantage is that, which is a big advantage, that you can do something else while the macro or the RPA solution is doing what it has been asked to do. Right? And in some new deployments, RPAs can actually be much faster than human beings, because the speed of opening a file, closing a file, getting access, copy, pasting, bringing it back, pasting into some other system, can be much faster, right, than human beings. But in most of the situations, I found that the speeds are actually comparable, if not worse. But the big advantage is that you have now the ability of doing something else in that time. So that is important. With that, we are at a stage where we can probably get into a little bit more detail, and I can bring up, hopefully, yeah. So this is something I believe very strongly in. Whatever is worth doing is worth doing better, right? And that is one of the core themes which I use in all my work. And I now have a website around it as well, which is more like a hobby website. It's more a blog and a place where I bring together all my podcasts and videos that I create. So it's more like a hobby site, but I truly believe in all of we are doing can be done better. And then this webinar today itself is like is a step towards that. So let's get to the meat of the front. So you can already see that I am not much of a slides person. Madan's team wanted a slide, so I did put together a slide. Otherwise, pretty much I don't use slides at all. But let's get to this. So some of these, so the session was built more as conditions apply, right? So what conditions apply? When I say conditions apply, I do not mean to say that RPA does not work. Far from it. I have seen RPA work really well, and I have been head of programs where RPA has done really well, and some of them were pretty complex solutions. So it does work, right? So, but earlier this year, I recorded a podcast in which I did a quick research for the podcast and found articles from 2015-16, which had predicted that 2020 will be the year of the RPA, and one third to half of our jobs will be overtaken by robots. We are told almost toward the end of the 2020, and the podcast I recorded was at the beginning of the year. Neither at the beginning of the year nor at the end of the year, our world has not been taken over by bots. Right? So that's good news and bad news. Right? Why is it bad news? Because we did expect as technology or people in technology, many of us may not be technologists like me. I hardly claim to be a technologist, but we are working in technology. We would expect that this concept, this method should have progressed much more by now. It hasn't. Right? And good news, because if it had progressed, one third or half of our jobs would have been taken over by bots. And on top of COVID, we would have had another difficulty to face. Right? But this is typical of what is called the hype cycle, right? So, there is a concept of hype cycle in management consulting, which says that whenever a new technology, new method, tool, technique, anything comes in, consultants sell and oversell it, and that leads to a hype cycle. And a hype cycle, there is much more to this. This is not a lecture on hype cycle, so I will not go into detail. But some of it is very useful because it creates awareness in the market, and people want to try it. Right? There are always some people who want to try. Many of you amongst you, this group will be some of the people who will, when the new mobile comes in, when something, a new other gadget comes in, you want to buy. So there are similar people in the industry also who want to try new things, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that builds momentum for the technology to build. There is another concept which is again, there has been Amara's law, which basically says that we tend to underestimate the change that, or rather, let me re-put it. We tend to overestimate the impact a technology can have in 1 year, and tend to underestimate the impact it can have in 10 years. Right? So this is important because, like many other technologies, we tend to overestimate the impact it can have in short term and tend to underestimate the impact it can have in longer term. This is definitely a longer term tool, and but as it blossoms, as it flowers, there are some conditions that apply, some things that we need to keep in mind, which is where I have been, nudging you to understand, right? So one of the areas of, or when I say conditions, or one of the areas where we should be mindful of is where to start, right? So where to start is, I was a couple of days back recording a podcast with Nigel Adams, who's one of the world's leading authorities on transformation, and he was talking about being match fit. Like in cricket or any other sport, I'm using cricket because most of the audience is from India in this webinar, but being match fit is extremely important. What do you do before you do a RPA is more important than what you do in RPA. Right? Like if you ask any cricketer or a batsman particularly, they will say that what we do in pre-season, even bowlers will say that what we do in pre-season is more important than what we do in the season. Right? Season is ultimately the outcome of what they have done. So if they have not been keeping fit, they have not been practicing, doing, especially trying to overcome some of the weaknesses that were found last year, they'll not be fit. Right? Same applies to RPA. When you want to get into RPA, you have to make sure that your processes are defined, they are well oiled, they are working, people know what they're doing, there is certain rhythm in it. If you don't have these things and you jump into RPA, it is bound to fail, because if your process is not operating rightly today, it is unlikely to perform in a RPA environment. It will have more and more exceptions. The bot will fail. The bot will fail more often than it is expected to fail. And you will then be surprised that, why is it not working? So I keep telling all my teams and other teams who care that if your process is not well oiled today, there is no way RPA can help it to get better. I mean, it can, but it will probably be worse off than this. So that's an important concept. The other is complex or simple. Where should you start? Should you start with very complex processes? Because if you conquer the complex processes, then you do well, right? Or should you start with simple so that you can get some early wins, right? Of course, like most questions in life or in management, there is no answer to this, right? So totally depends on you. My advice is start with simple. This is a new area. You don't know anything about it. And even if you've done RPA for a year, you still don't know anything about it, because it's an evolving method, right? Everybody is learning. It is blind leading blind. So somebody is less blind than the other. And no offense to people with visual disabilities, but it's just a proverbial reference that we are all learning together, right? So the important aspect is that, in this situation, if you pick up simple processes, like if you're in a bank, address change processes, transactional processes, maybe simple reporting processes. If you are able to automate these processes, then the chances of you getting confident and for bigger processes, more complex processes, is higher, and you will get a fair idea. Learn from others, and which is what you are doing. So I'm glad that you are already doing this. People who have tried things, Madan and team put out a lot of excellent webinars and other learning tools. So check what they have done earlier. And of course, the web is full of other tools. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Learn from what others have done. I'll give you an example, which is a very embarrassing example, but it will probably help you understand why I'm saying this, right? Early in my RPA career or transformation career, I about 4 or 5 years back, maybe about 4 years, less than 4 years back, we were doing a large scale transformation of a banking process, and it was expected to totally automate the process. I'll not get into the detail of the process because that's not important here. Everything fine. The consultant signed up, we signed up, the process owner signed up, the bot designer, everybody signed up. Yeah, fantastic. This is done now. 2 weeks from now, we will get into the final test phase and build, design, everything all over test phase. 2 weeks done, we are in the phase, and we had 98 to 99% exceptions, which means the process did not go through for 99% cases, right? So suddenly there is an operations problem. I had to bring in, of course, we were doing it in parallel run. There was already an operations team. All volume was diverted because the bot had failed, right? What was looking possible, in everything, the pre-testing, everything did not happen when we got closer to production. Thankfully, we had not got close into production. So what was the case? The case was that all of us had missed that there was one step in that whole process where the signature of this is a bank, right? So signature of the customer had to be verified, and then the next process was to start. Now today there are of course most of these tools have built-in OCR capabilities, and it is possible to recognize or compare a signature. But 4 years ago, it was very, very difficult, and the bot failed. Now, would you call this process a complex process or a simple process? I don't know. For us, it was a simple process, but there was a complex element inside a simple process at that time for the technology of that time. So many such things happen, and it's important to then, when we when I then spoke to some of my friends in other banks and other, similar process, they all said that, oh yeah, yeah, this happened to us as well. And I was sitting like a fool thinking that, had I spoken to a few people, I would have realized that this can happen. So that's an important one, right? Learning from others. Which RPA tool? Like I said, this is not, of course, a session where I will detail about or get into which RPA tool is better than the other. It is similar to many of you, including me, at some point in our life have wanted to lose weight by running or joining some gym or other such thing. And if you reflect upon your journey, the only thing you remember is buying that Nike t-shirt and shoes and Adidas trousers and tights, and some people would buy headband and wristband and that fancy wristwatch and everything else. But what was core to that whole process was you going out and doing what you wanted to do, whether the gym or the run or none of these things actually ran for you. Same happens for RPA, that all the vendors are good till you have to just start, right? So my only suggestion will be don't enter into commitments with one vendor for 2 to 3 years, because there are some vendors or some tools from vendors which are more amenable to certain type of processes, which you may realize after 6 months or so. So one suggestion from my experience is that don't enter into long-term commitments with a particular vendor. Try 2, 3 things out. You will definitely find one which suits your company better. Just like you would do when you were going running, you will try 2, 3 shoes. One of them will be very good for you, and you will run. And some of these shoes are 10,000, 20,000 rupees, which is a lot of money for amateur runners. Same happens for RPA. If you commit millions, it's a lot of money for any company. Forget large.
Excuse me, Krishna, can you please go on mute, guys? May I request to go on mute? Thank you.
Madan, while there is a small interruption, time check. How much more time do I have?
Those should be okay. I mean, it's your call, Anshuman. I think the participants are enjoying your conversation. I think by 45 we can wrap it up, and then we can take it up questions.
Yeah, so that was my plan anyway. So I think as for my watch, I am on target for that. So good. Yeah. So which RPA tool? I shared an analogy with you that it is like your fitness or other something that you want to do. So think carefully. None of us are capable or qualified enough to have a view on what is this tool better than the others or not. Every tool is good for a certain situation, and you have to be able to try. Right? The next area which I often talk about is overambition, right? So like most management methods, the hype cycle pushes us to think that this will solve world hunger, and thereafter from next year onward there won't be any world hunger and or boil the ocean or other terms which are often used. I've been around in this industry for 25 years, and I've studied management literature from past. In the last 40 to 50 years, every 5 years there has been some method which was promising to solve everything that the world was suffering. I'm talking about only operations and the management operations kind of space. Baldrige, Six Sigma, ISO before that, Deming Prize, lots of things. Everything, every 5 years, 7 years. Then, in the last 10 years, there have been more technology interventions, including RPA and related methods. And this won't be the last. Right? Another 5 years, there will be something else, maybe an advanced version. Already, there's a lot of AI and ML being talked about, and most of them are only talking, right? Recently, some months back, I saw a very funny ad where there's an AI-enabled shirt, and I was wondering, obviously it's a very major manufacturer, so I won't name them. The manufacturer had no clue what they were saying. They just wanted to cash in on the word AI and ML and just dumped it on the ad. I, for my life, could not figure out how the um, shirt is using AI and ML, right? The design
Anshuman,
process may
sorry to
have been good.
interrupt you. Sorry. Krishna,
Yeah,
can you please go on mute? This is twice.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, madam.
Guys, please make sure that you are on mute. Great, thank you.
yeah. Thanks, everyone. So another example is couple of months back, not even couple of, about a month back, there was a launch of payment services, which is again AI and ML enabled. All that is doing is that you enter your bill payment for whatever satellite TV or electricity or something. It works like every other bill payment services, but they just wanted to cash in on AI and ML word. And if there's an audit done, they will fail miserably. But unfortunately, India does not have those laws. Of course, somebody can go to Advertising Council of India, but all I'm trying to say is that people will say all kinds of things, right? But it is your ability to experiment and use RPA and then learn from it that is the most important one, right? Uh, does not matter if you take 6 more months. Does not matter. Most of the programs that I've headed, some of the biggest programs that have been there, they don't deliver, right? So it's okay not to deliver, but it is okay to have some ambition, but not okay to have over ambition. Um, Fortunately, the hype cycle a little bit is over for RPA, and these days consultants are also pretty wise. They have more white hair like me, and are able to advise a little bit more cautiously, right? So starting simple is again important. Like I said, some of the examples I gave. Don't worry, you can catch up, right? This is a marathon. You can catch up. If your first mile is slow, you can always catch up. This is not a sprint to be done in 10 seconds. You can easily catch it. CBA. What is CBA? Cost benefit analysis. I just put CBA because the word was a little too big for the block that I had created. As I told you, I am not a very slide person. So some cost benefit analysis is important, but don't overdo it. Right? You will never know the multiple line items that you or your consultant or the template has. Take some educated guess and move on, and also orient your senior leadership, particularly the finance people, that this is not a science as yet. We don't exactly know what will happen. um, some very funny things happen. I'll give you one story. We were maybe two of them. We were doing a RP implementation uh, and I'll simplify it for you. There was some ticketing situation where transactions would land and we were to do. My team was not involved. The RPA team directly went in, the technology team, and they looked at the process, designed the tool, and it was implemented. We were, of course, involved towards the end, and I was a little worried because I said that one of the assumptions is that we will have 20 per hour as the volume, and or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers, but when the bot started, we had 2 to 3 times backlog, right, from the normal backlog. Why? So we were then called in, and this is where I say that process excellence is extremely important for RPA, right? If you can do some streamlining before you implement RPA, you can save yourself a lot of money, because the most important question in RPA even today is that should this process exist? Forget the automation. Should this process even exist? And we discovered that when we came in, we, of course, many of you are from maybe business excellence, process excellence, or quality background. You will do a arrival pattern study, right? Number of hours, what is the fluctuation? And we discovered that the volumes used to fluctuate during the day, during the week, and across the year by up to 4 times. And unfortunately, the study, when the original study was done, it was at the bottom of uh, the arrival pattern, right? So, which means up to 4 times uh, increase in volume was known, already known. So this is not unknown. This should not be a surprise, right? This is already happening. Somebody just overlooked. Right? So these kind of funny things happen, right? This is funny after the incident, but of course that time there was a huge chaos, and I of course looked good because I said that you didn't use my team. See what mess you can get into, right? But obviously for not good for the company, and those kind of things. Also remember the third point is important, that so I told you I'll give you two examples, right? So just keeping an eye on the so the other example is around, uh, is this automation really required? Again, in a situation where we were implementing around a bot solution, which when it came for my approval, I saw the estimate was $250,000. I was surprised. I said, "What are you automating that it is going to cost this much?" Right? So team came, huge solutions, this, that, and I figured out that at the end of the day, it is an Outlook email automation. We separately put two people together. Within 1 week, we were able to automate the whole solution without any bot, without any other intervention, free of cost, using Outlook intervention. So this goes back to the point that the first and most important question in RPA even today is that should this be even automated? Coming to the next point, SME retention. Always keep in mind that when you robotize your processes, your subject matter expertise actually comes down. So what are you doing to make sure that your subject matter expertise is retained, enhanced, and not lost? Right? Many companies today have started robotizing or automating only parts of their processes, mainly to retain subject matter experts. Right? I know this sounds a little weird, but it's an important one, right? So partnerships, like I said, I think shared earlier that it is important for you to partner with some multi-vendor entities who are not tied to a single vendor, because single vendor sometimes may not be the best vendor for you. And similarly, inside the company also partnerships are important. So partnering with HR, partnering with finance for deployment is extremely useful, because there will be some job displacements, right? If your solution is successful. HR will be important. You will need finance for understanding what is happening on the benefit side, which is my next and last point, right? Counting the money. And many of us, this is, first of all, let's get this right. This is not a hobby shop, right? You're not doing RPA because it's a nice thing to do and it's cool and you are lucky and you are interested in the job in there. None of that. It has to ultimately benefit, right? Of course, you have to enjoy it, enjoy the ride, but you have to be able to deliver the benefit. And this is where I bring in the last mile thing that is important. Um, Collaborate with other people like HR, finance, process excellence, and other people in the last mile, because they will not only help deploy, they'll also help calculate the benefit. The other is, counting too soon versus not counting. So both are not good. Counting too soon obviously is not good, because sometimes you will get early encouraging result, but after a month or so the bot will start failing. And reverse is also possible. The bot was failing earlier, but it starts learning. Maybe you have built in some ML interventions, and start learning and doing really well. Couple of years ago, we were implementing a bot for a anti-money laundering solution, and the initial numbers were very low, about 60% only. So 60%, 40% was false positive, which means basically it was an error, right? And luckily we maintained the parallel process. So the bot was built to study what the human being was doing, and within 2 weeks the percentage went to 80, and by the time of about 2 months we were at 90-95%, and subsequently much more, because the bot could learn what the human being was doing in trying to search. So initially what looked like a rejection, within 3 months looked like amazing solution. And this whole group was about 1,500 people, and with the potential of saving at least half of them, or at least doing the simpler checks through the bots, and you don't need the entire process function. So these are some examples that of actual deployment. FT or dollar. Sorry, there's a typo there. I meant FT or dollar, and so I don't know. I mean, really, I have seen both, and finance will push you into dollar. Your management will push you into FT. My suggestion always is FT, but I know that finance will push for dollar. FT is a very good one because don't go for hours, right? So some people will go for number for hours saved. Hours saved means nothing because if you can't convert it into FT and actual people, right? Not even FT, actual people. That okay, this process had 25 people. Now it can be done. Same volume can be managed by 15. That is something that I will accept, right? You give me some, flimsy dollar or number of hours or FT and all, it means nothing, right? Will actual people be saved from this process or no? Or will the process be faster? Will customers benefit or no? Any of those things, right? Actual things. So sometimes both FT and dollar are unable to capture the actual benefit, but it's a good start. My suggestion is FT or actual people and less of dollar in the early cycle, but definitely over a period of time you will have to look at some dollar. So I think we are pretty much on time as Madan wanted. So with that, I'll thank you and take some questions. So I'll send this PPT across to Madan. There are some of these, ways you can connect with me. You can, of course, write an email to me, find me on LinkedIn, my podcast, or my website, and other things. Do take some time to read through. There's a wealth of knowledge available across the net and should be useful. So with that, Madan, I'll hand over to you. How do I?
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Anshuman. I think it was really great learning for me along with this community about the strategic aspect of how to transform your business function, especially the operation. I have got approximate 5 to 7 questions. I'll go one by one. So the question number one, and by the way, guys, this is great to follow Anshuman on LinkedIn, and he's doing a fantastic job writing the blogs and podcast on managebetter.in. So if you can just save this link and follow him, that will really help us to upskill our knowledge and learn what is interesting happening into this space. So this is just announcement. But Manish has a question. Question number one: uh, is RPA going to replace the web-based tools for testing?
Oh, is Manish online? Which tools did you have in mind, Manish?
I think
Yeah,
Manish. Yeah,
yeah,
Manish.
I am online, sir. Hi, sir. Hi, Anshuman, sir.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
question.
great. First of all, thank you for your taking out and providing the things that we are. Yeah, it's a grateful for me to join the session. So I was actually from the testing background and working on the Selenium tools and
Oh,
some yeah,
thought so.
other web-based tools. So I was trying to understand that in future, RPA tool is going to replace the web-based testing or something else.
I won't think so. So yeah, thanks, Manish. I thought of Selenium because this is a common question. I don't think so. Firstly, using RPA only for testing is not a smart idea, right? It's a good, it is useful, but it is like, what was it originally meant for? It is originally meant for automating the actual process. Only using it on testing is good use case, but there are better, more specialized tools for doing that. My suggestion usually is to stay away from that because there are specialized tools like you mentioned some, and I'm sure there are many more. I don't know whether it will replace, but my hope is that it should not replace. The what RPA is designed to do or best at doing is to automate the entire workflow, the value cycle that is there, and testing is only one component of it. So that's my answer, I would say.
Okay. So I'm taking this journey to the next. Pooja has a question, how to identify complex and simple processes.
Good question. Sorry, who asked, Mother?
Says Pooja.
Pooja, thank you. Very good question. So there is no tool or there is no meter that I can plug in and know this. But typically, there are some indicators, right? So if the straight-through processing is very high, right, likely chances are the process is simple. If the error rates are very low, likely chances that is the thing. Compare with the industry, if there will be other similar processes in the industry depending on which company you are from. If the process is significantly repetitive, less decision points, right? Those are simpler ones. If the process is multiple, like credit process in a banking process, right? So a decision has to be made. It cannot be, of course, companies have scorecards, but if the customer is talking to you and saying that, look, I have one salaried income and I have one additional income, I can pay more, right? And you can change the terms of the loan. This is something in RPA will never be able to do, at least for the next few years, right? So you need people, right? If you reject this kind of a customer, you will be missing out on some, valuable customer because somebody else will give the loan to this customer. So I would say complex processes generally have multiple decision loops or decision points and are not as easily repetitive as others are. Simpler ones, your current scorecards or current metrics will tell you that the process is simple because straight through processing may be very high, error rates may be very, very low, and or cycle times may be much faster. You have a very steady time cycle, and those of you who have a quality background, if you apply control charts, you will find that the process is well within the control limits. So if you see all that, then those processes are simpler. And there is, of course, slightly, if you are from a Six Sigma background, you can apply coefficient of variation. Few months back, I recorded a video on coefficient of variation, how you can use it to identify simpler and complex processes. So there are various ways, but there's no single meter I can plug and say that, okay, fantastic, this is simple, but very good question.
Yeah, thanks. So Anshuman, Vipul has a question. This is little lengthy. Which RPA tool has maximum market share? Of course, it depends on tools' capabilities and use cases to solve. Like AWS has max market share in cloud service provided. Likewise, for RPA, who is leading this front?
So, Madan, I said in the beginning, I will refuse to answer such questions because they may indicate my preference for some tools. And I also work for a large IT service provider, which has some partnerships with multiple vendors. It's a slightly unfair question in this forum. So sorry, Vipul. I know the answer, but I can't share.
Okay. So Somnath has a question. Vipul, maybe offline we can catch up. I may give you answer. Considering this one, Somnath has a question. What is the future of RPA?
Oh, this is a very loaded question, Somnath, because if you had been a little specific, it's a little easier. But I definitely, I've said this at the beginning of the session also, and I've been speaking at other forums as well as writing that RPA will sooner than later, within the next 1 to 3 years, become part of your process and operations, right? All new methods and technologies and tools, techniques that come in, sooner than later become part of operations, right? So some years ago, and I'm not comparing this with anything, but some year ago, if you have been working long enough, when ISO 9000 came in 1987, within initial 3-4 years, consultants were ruling the roost. They were, pushing for it. It was very complex. It was, difficult. And then about in the early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, it started to become part of the operations, right? Everybody knew about it. Same thing happened to Six Sigma. Same thing happened to others. So with the new generation of people coming in who are more adept at technology and usage of technology or applications, and with people like Madan teaching a lot of people how to use RPA, in the next 1 to 3 years, or maybe a little bit more than that, this will become part and parcel of your method. So when processes will be designed, people will write automation code for making the process more smooth. And why do you need RPA, right? RPA is essentially a wrapper, right? So you can't and you don't want to touch core systems. Therefore, you write a RPA wrapper, the wrapper will touch the core systems and keep it error free, right? So human beings are not required to touch the core system. So, which is something, like things like Pega systems does really well, and some of the other, I didn't want to name a vendor, but that's what I mean. So that will become very, very, I would say, streamlined. It will be part of the operations in the next maybe 3 to 5 years, where people like you and me, who if you want to continue in this field, must know about RPA enough to write simple automation configurations, or at least to tell the designer or developer what to do. Right? You don't necessarily need to learn RPA to write or to configure the bot, but you need to know the game, right? So what is the game being played? Then only you can understand what changes to do. So that is where people like Madan, who are doing a fantastic job in training more people, are important. So nobody knows the future, but this is the most likely scenario.
Yeah, thanks, Anshuman. There is a very good, insightful question by Pooja once again. How to calculate the CVA cost-benefit analysis? Is it for each and every processes?
So Pooja, like I said during the session, don't over-engineer the CBA, right? You don't know all the line items. Some line items will emerge, some line items will disappear. Ballpark number or back of the envelope calculation is more than okay. There is, of course, some of the things that I often find people missing out. I will mention maybe one very important thing, the run services, right? So bots have to be run after they have been developed. Many calculations I find are only till development and deployment, but they miss out on the run. So what do I mean by run? You need a command center, you need some kind of course, depending on the vendor, you need different kinds. Some vendors provide some kind of a central console or ability to, perform what is called command center. Different names are there in the industry, but you will need some kind of a run services mechanism, right? So that's an important one. I would suggest that you include that run services in your calculations. That's all I would say. I can't give you any more details on how to conduct an cost benefit analysis.
Okay. Anshuman, I'm moving forward. Bipul has a question with respect to what you talked about, the signature. He's saying one use case you said worked 99% well, and just because of signature reading capability wasn't mature enough, it failed. After 4 years today, what such capability today's RPA tool is still lack?
I don't think this is so. People, this has been overcome, right? Most RPA tools have RPA, OCR capabilities. Even if they don't have OCR capabilities of their own, you can always go to, additional third-party OCR tools, which are very, very accurate, up to 80 to 85%. And signatures are easier to. Signature actually doesn't need too much complex to OCR, because OCR is more when handwriting is to be read. Signature can be image compared, right? So it's you can compare parts of the image and still do. You don't really need to know very in depth, right? So this has been overcome. Most top of the line providers are able to. Otherwise, you can always go to a third party. I would say vendor for if your process has significant handwritten stuff, then I think you may need some specialist OCR tool.
Yeah, in addition to the question on this, Anshuman, like which of the capability you still see is still not mature in today's world? So which you really want to see, this feature should be be there in RPA tool.
I think, see, from a tool point of view, I think most vendors have matured. That's what I meant, is that most vendors have matured. Couple of years back, it was very difficult for some of the tools to talk to a core system. Now they can talk to any core system. They can even talk among themselves, some of them, right? So there were people who would say, 2 years ago, if you had asked me the question, I would say that I would need some kind of a desktop capability, right? I don't want to use a high-end. So even those 2 or 3 of the bigger vendors all have recently Microsoft acquired one of them. So I think either I may not be the best person to answer this, but I would think that today what you want to do with an RPA tool can be done. The only difficulty is that where are you applying it? So the frontier to be worked upon is process mining and not so much the process automation. So some of you should look up process mining. There are multiple tools available. That is growing rapidly. If I could implement process mining tool on my process and it could tell me that these are the most likely candidates for your automation, I would. That's possible today, by the way, but it's maturing. But that would be one area that I would definitely want to improve. And some kind of, since if you are pushing me, I would say that some kind of war room console of what is happening. The control or command centers are not very mature even now, but they are improving with every release, right? So 2 years back or 1 year back, some people wanted web-based tools. So one of the larger vendors now has a web-based. You don't need to download anything. It will totally operate. You can create the bot online in a browser. Of course, only one of them has, and the others are thinking whether to develop or not. So almost whatever you would want is already there. And it may be limitations of my creative or my ability to think in the future. But I haven't come across too many issues in the last 2-3 years on we want to do this, but it's not better. It needs to get better, but it's there.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
We have a next question from Dinesh, and this is something really interesting. Dinesh is asking, sometimes a process automated via RPA takes longer time compared to a manual processes. Is there a way to overcome such challenges?
So this is what I was saying earlier, that manual processes become proficient with time. Most RPA processes will perform the same way as they were recorded, right? Now, this is not a limitation or a critique of the RPA. It is only a awareness that you should have, right? So there are a lot of processes where human beings become very proficient, and with time they develop shortcuts or speed, and their speed can go up to 2, 3, 4 times of the original speed, whereas in a RPA it will not. That is point one. Two, if there are multiple handoffs or multiple systems that you have to open, close, this, that, you will give a bot employee ID, the bot will have a password, it will go into multiple systems. Each will take the same 8 seconds, 4 seconds, whatever it was taking. It will never get any faster, right? So this is where I would say that you could have asked the question early on that do you need to automate this kind of a process? If you have evidence of the human being becoming proficient, and in addition you don't see too many errors, this is one of the processes should not be automated. There is no major benefit in automating processes where either human beings are becoming very proficient and are relatively error-free. What is the advantage you got out of RPA except taking some people's jobs? So, which is in a populous country like India, never the right thing to do. So, focus on processes which need automation. This one And there are many. I have seen. You are right. I've seen many such cases where the bot is actually taking longer. So why? Why did you do it? Should we even productionize it? Should we stop it at develop stage and testing stage and not productionize it? So yeah. So this is a tricky one. No answer yet, but I would probably not deploy such a bot.
Okay, great. Ravi has a question again with respect to the future of the job. So Ravi is asking, what is the future in manufacturing industry for RPA?
So, Ravi, are you in manufacturing or you want to take up a job in manufacturing?
I am in manufacturing.
You are in the right place, man. Be there. This services world is madness. Manufacturing is the BAP of all automation, right? So already almost every process, and I started my career in manufacturing. A lot of processes are already automated, and for the last 50, 60, 70 years, automation has been happening in the manufacturing industry, continues to happen. The RPA that we are talking about in this will be done in the service processes of manufacturing industries, right? Not in the manufacturing processes of manufacturing industry. So, for example, time office or what is in a typical factory called time office, finance, order taking, invoicing, client contact, those kind of things. But this RPA is not about the automation of manufacturing services, right? So the automation of service operations of a manufacturing industry, definitely the same, whatever I said earlier and till now applies everything the same way, right? You will have an HR, you will have purchasing, you will have marketing, you will have accounting, finance, all these departments, right? All these departments are equally open to automation or RPA, just as they are open in other service organizations. But keep out the manufacturing part, because there is another type of automation that happens there, which is actually, in my view, the far more advanced type. What we are learning today in RPA is basically trying to imbibe from there.
Yeah. It's like one of the other participant asked about IIoT while providing solution on IIoT, whether RPA should be one of the ecosystems.
Unlikely. So see, IoT or other methods will come with their own. So these are advanced technologies which are being built today. So the automation is already inbuilt into it, right? Where you apply RPA is where the automation is not inbuilt into the process, and it is a 5, 10, 15, 20-year-old process which you need to work faster. However, you cannot or you are not allowed to touch the core systems. So then you need something like an RPA so that it works smoother. If you are building something today, why do you need RPA? You can build the automation inside the tool, right? Inside the maybe 5 years down the line, what's implemented today may need some kind of RPA solution. So I would think that it's this is what I call if you have only one hammer in hand, everything is a nail, right? So because we understand RPA a little bit more today, it's not that everything can be solved with RPA or should be solved with RPA. Anything that is being built today with today's technology, today's principles, technology assets, should have automation inbuilt into it to the extent required, right? And RPA will, I always call RPA as a wrapper, right? It is enabling processes to talk and work smoothly. It's not actually changing the process. RPA does not change the actual core process. It only enables the process to work smoother and faster, and the interchanges and exchanges happen faster and seamlessly with minimal or no manual intervention. So the answer, of course, Ravi, is that the IoT part already has much of automation required. That is required is already been built. Once new applications come in and two IoT devices or multiple IoT devices start to talk with each other, you may need some kind of solution, which will certainly not be called RPA.
All right. So this is the
Okay,
second
thank you.
last question. This is the second last question. A similar kind of question Suresh has asked. I believe Suresh this has answered the query. Himanshu has a question. How do we manage the implementation of different templates, that is invoice, using the OCR?
I didn't get the question.
Once again, I'm repeating. Himanshu, are you there? Himanshu, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So I think my question was if there are different templates, for example, there are different invoices, and if I have to extract the data from those invoices, if a new template comes in, how do we manage in OCR?
Himanshu, it seems a very specific question to a specific situation. So obviously, very difficult to answer in a generic way. But in general, if the template is new, then you have to code for it, right? You have to provide for it. The solution will not know how to read a new template because you have not coded that way. There are, of course, some new solutions available which will quickly read and give you some suggestions. But I would still say that if you have 8 types of invoices and you have coded your solution to read those and consolidate into one database or whatever else next process you are doing, and a 9th template comes in, right, which is, let's say, in an email format, you can't read it, or the bot can't read it, it will throw an exception, right, because it is not amongst the 8 templates that are coded, that it is coded to read. And then you have to tackle the exception. After a few exceptions that you tackle, you will be able to easily find a way to code for it, because there will be some pattern that you can observe. But originally, I mean, straight away, even if some tool can, I would suggest not to read it.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
So Palni Kumar has a question again with respect to the failures. Which phase of RPA more prone to fail, like implementation, tool selection, or selection of processes, or resistance from the people? Resistance from the people.
This is you will have to write a book, Palani Kumar, on this. But all phases are open to this thing. If we have to fail, I would rather fail in the early stages of the RPA project than later stages, because by that time a lot of investment has already gone in and it's not useful. Important that good that you brought up resistance of people. So I have a slightly contrarian view sometimes that resistance of people is not necessarily bad. Imagine if there was no resistance, you would be changing processes every day. Is that good? No, right? Because people are resistant, you are actually getting better in your solution and offering them an even better solution, right? Now, of course, there is a limit to resistance, because if people are resisting for resistance sake, that's not good. But resistance actually is not necessarily bad. Most progress happens in this world because somebody resisted the original solution and then you came up with a better solution. So don't take resistance of people, including of yourself, as necessarily an evil. I believe that most management changes and most progress actually, and there are multiple examples in organizational history that everything happened because somebody resisted the original solution. Right? So resistance, people who resist are actually, we should be grateful. Depending on what you do every morning to worship, you should be lighting some agarbatti for them that they are around, because if they were not around, the world would be very mediocre if people who resist are not around. Every solution that we bring will get implemented, and that would be a very mediocre solution.
Yeah, great.
So I didn't answer your question, Palni Kumar, but indirectly I've given you some suggestions on resistance.
Okay, so with your permission, Gagan has requested the last. This is the final question. Do you permit to ask Anshuman?
Yeah, I have time.
Okay. Gagan is asking, hi sir, have you seen RPA working in software engineering processes?
No, not with much success, Gagan. So It does operate. So particularly run services, network operations, and all there it does have a lot of because ultimately most of the run services is about timely intervention, reporting, escalation. Those things RPA can do really well. You can code it that way, right? Your person doesn't have to sit to note that when this node went down and something. But in the software engineering part, see again, let's go back to basics. Why do you need RPA, right? You need RPA because you don't want to touch the core systems, and you want the wrapper and the process to run faster. You don't have that need in a software engineering process, right? You when you're designing something, you can design and include those elements in the software engineering as such. So apart from reporting and similar suggestions, I would think that it does have very, very limited use, because you have an opportunity of creating the solution that could work, right? So why do an RPA when the solution itself can be created to include those options or those work scenarios? So I think this is important for all people on the call, is that it's always important to understand that this tool, technique, method that we are using does not solve all world's problems, right? So it is required and implemented or implementable in certain situations, and that's better, right? So if you try and use it for everything, you will generally fail. So software engineering, I would not use too much of this, because I have the capability, or I have the opportunity to code what I want as an output. So why do I use a wrapper? Gagan, hopefully that will answer your question.
Yes, sir. Of course. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we are done with all the questions. So it's time to say thanks to everybody who joined today. I know that it was not easy, it's Sunday. So but thank you everybody for joining, listening Anshuman, learning a lot of things. So thanks a lot. And Anshuman, special thanks to you from all the community members and ourselves. And really, it was really insightful learning all the strategical aspect of the RPA. So thanks a lot. And guys, please follow Anshuman on Better Learning. Sorry, I forgot the name, but Manage Better. Yeah, managebetter.in. Somebody asking, are you available on YouTube? I think I saw some of your recording available on the YouTube.
Yes, I'm not big on YouTube, but most of my videos that I post these days are both on YouTube and LinkedIn. And you can find me as AGS Tiwari on YouTube, so should be okay. Or even as Manage Better.
I think, guys, LinkedIn is the place where professionally we should be following. From there, you should be getting all the details, updates, what others are doing, what Anshuman is doing. So I think that should be fine. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Anshuman. Thank you, everybody. Please stay safe. Make yourself safe and healthy during this pandemic time. Keep learning. Thank you very much. Thanks, Anshuman. Sometimes we'll catch up. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Bye bye,
All the
guys.
best, everyone. Bye.